Footsteps echoed gently, blending with low-pitched chatter. Rows of wooden chairs were aligned neatly, illuminated by warm light that filled the room, creating an intimate and welcoming atmosphere. This was no flashy Apple product launch, nor was it an ordinary technology seminar. Tonight was different. Tonight, Steve Jobs would talk about something deeply personal, his reflections on life's meaning and the lessons born from failure. Dressed in his iconic black turtleneck, blue jeans, and simple sneakers, Jobs stepped onto the stage. Without the need for a long introduction, he smiled softly, his sharp eyes scanning the audience. His presence, both calm and commanding, captivated the room. Among the hundreds of faces in the crowd, one stood out, not because of size or prominence, but for its quiet, wide-eyed curiosity. An 8-year-old girl named Lily sat near the back, clutching an old, weathered Bible. Its pages were faded, its edges frayed, but it carried the legacy of her grandmother, who had passed it down to her. Within those pages were more than scripture. They held memories, warmth, and a connection that Lily cherished deeply. She had spent countless nights rehearsing a question, her small heart anxious yet determined to ask. He spoke of innovation, creativity, and the resilience that brought Apple back from the edge of collapse. He detailed his journey of bringing world-changing products to life, the Macintosh, the iPhone, and beyond. The audience listened intently, nodding occasionally, their faces glowing with admiration. But Jobs could sense something. While they admired his achievements, their engagement felt shallow, as intellectual rather than emotional. It seemed that despite his words, the heart of the room remained untouched. Reaching the end of his talk, Jobs paused. He leaned slightly forward and gestured with one hand, his voice steady yet inviting. "I've shared a lot today," he said, "but now I'd like to hear from you. Does anyone have a question?" Instantly, a forest of hands shot up. The questions came one by one. What was the future of Apple? What did he think of artificial intelligence? How would he define the next revolution in technology? Jobs answered each question succinctly, his responses sharp and characteristic of his brilliance. But then a small figure rose from a seat near the back. Unlike others, she didn't raise her hand or call out. She simply stood, her presence quiet yet resolute. Slowly, the murmurs in the room hushed. All eyes turned toward her. Jobs noticed her too. His demeanor softened, and he leaned slightly toward her direction. "Little one," he said, his voice warm and patient. "What's your question?" Lily hesitated for only a moment. Her small hands clutched the Bible tighter, the worn leather a source of strength. Taking a deep breath, she spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Mr. Jobs," she began, her words cutting through the silence, "what do you think God means?" The room froze. Conversations ceased, chairs no longer creaked, and even the faintest sounds seemed to vanish. It was as if the air itself held its breath. Jobs, known for his quick wit and sharp answers, paused. His gaze dropped from her to the Bible she clutched, and his expression shifted. It wasn't shock or confusion. Instead, it was a quiet contemplation, as if her words had struck a chord deep within him. He remained silent for several long moments, his hands resting lightly on the wooden podium. The weight of her question hung in the room, tangible and profound. "Lily," he said gently, his tone slower, more reflective than usual. "You know, when I was young, I thought success was everything. I wanted to build things that would change the world, and I believed that would give my life meaning. But life isn't that simple." He paused, tapping the podium lightly, as if gathering his thoughts. "There was a time when everything I thought was important came crashing down. You may not know this, but I was fired from the very company I helped create Apple. At that moment, I felt like I had lost everything." The room was utterly silent, the audience hanging on every word. Jobs' gaze dropped momentarily, his voice tinged with sorrow. "I was angry at the people who made it happen, angry at myself for not seeing it coming. And then, in those dark moments, I started to question everything, not just my decisions, but the very meaning of it all. I wondered, if God exists, why would he let something like this happen? Why would he let me fall so far?" His words resonated deeply, the weight of his vulnerability filling the room. But then, his tone began to shift, gentler yet resolute. "But here's what I came to understand, Lily. Meaning isn't something you can always see. It's like the stars during the day. They're always there, but you can only see them when the sky grows dark." He straightened slightly, his eyes meeting Lily's once more. For me, God isn't an answer you can define easily. God is a reminder that even when everything seems to be falling apart, there's a purpose we can't yet see. My darkest days weren't the end, they were a beginning. Job's expression softened, and a faint smile crossed his lips. If I hadn't been fired from Apple, I wouldn't have created Pixar. I wouldn't have returned to Apple years later to do the work I'm most proud of today. I learned that sometimes our greatest failures lead us to the successes we never imagined. He chuckled softly, his gaze warm. So, Lily, I believe God, or the meaning of life, is something that never abandons us, even when we think we've lost everything. It's there, like those stars, waiting for us to find the courage to look. The silence that followed wasn't from confusion or hesitation. It was a shared moment of reflection. Each person seemed to be grappling with their own version of Lily's question, their own search for meaning. Lily's big eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled, a small, genuine smile, one that spoke of understanding beyond her years. Jobs stepped away from the podium, walking toward her. He knelt slightly to meet her at eye level, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice low but sincere. "Sometimes the most important questions come from the smallest people. Never stop asking them." The room erupted in soft applause, a wave of warmth and connection sweeping through. Jobs stood, turned back to the crowd, and smiled. "Our lives are short, and none of us know what tomorrow will bring, but each of us has the power to make an impact, not by what we own, but by how we live and how we treat those around us." He looked back at Lily one last time. "Stay curious, Lily. It's the key to changing the world." With that, he walked off the stage, the sound of applause following him, and Lily stood there, clutching her Bible, her small smile now glowing with quiet pride.